Marshall Peak, Chapter 10, Money Bankruptcy. Xianxia didn't think much of this because they were in Black Plum Village, located close to Sky Tower, and other disciples coming down to the village was quite common. A little while ago, Xianxia arrived at the line for rice. The line was quite long, the length of 2 stalls. The business was very prosperous, but only had one waiter running around serving. The boss was calculating money on an abacus at the counter, while the wife greeted the guests. The line gradually shortened as more people finished ordering, and Xianxia joined the queue. "Madam!" Xianxia cried out. A 40-year-old looking lady looked up to see who it was. When she saw it was Xianxia, she suddenly smiled and said,
"Ah, young man, you came to buy rice again."
"Yes." He walked to the front of the counter, pointed to a bag behind the counter, and said, "Give me 1 bag, please." While the lady was tying up the bag with a string, she said, "Young man, you buy just 1 bag a month? Is this enough for you?" Xianxia replied, "It's enough." "You're lying," the lady retorted while looking at Xianxia. "Look at you. Such thin arms and legs." "What's with the skinny arms and legs if you eat properly?" Xianxia smiled sheepishly. "I also go to the mountains to hunt, so therefore even with just 1 bag I won't be hungry." While the boss concentrated on calculating the bill, he whispered to her, "Go fetch the old rice from the back and give it to this child. We'll listen to boss." Madame replied with a smile, "How is this right? You are also trying to make a living here." Xianxia shouted. The lady immediately frowned her face. "What use is old rice? Leaving it there will only provide a place for insects to grow. Anyways, people won't eat it. But the owner said this rice still has some nutrients, although less. You wait here. I will go get some for you to take home." She had already started walking towards the back room as she said this. Xianxia's heart swelled, for he didn't know what to say. Whenever he came to buy rice, the boss and his wife always found various excuses to give him more. They say that insects will grow in old rice and the like, but in fact they always gave him good rice, not whole rice. Their generosity gave Xianxia hope in this sad world. "Thank you, Uncle He." Xianxia's voice had a slight trembling to it. The boss smiled and looked up when living alone. "Don't you have household problems? In the future, whenever you're hungry, just come to our shop. We may not have much, but we still have enough rice for you to eat." "Okay." Xianxia nodded his head. This world still had good people around. Shortly, 2 enthusiastic people came to the rice store and kicked some people ready to order their meals from the line and away from the storefront. "Ah!" The second little brother fell, landed on his butt, and flipped over. It was a big problem because he couldn't get up again after falling. "Why?" "Boss!" he called towards the people who had kicked the little brother as he ran out from behind the counter and towards the 2 men. Xianxia quickly helped the second little brother up, while intently glaring at the 2 evil-faced men. One of the men, who looked pale and thin, was clutching his stomach, while the other, built like a bear, supported the pale one. These 2 were the ones who kicked the second brother. "Who's the boss here?" the man people shouted out. I am. "Boss!" he quickly replied. He was only an ordinary merchant, yet the 2 men who called him out had such fierce-looking faces. The swords at their waist and the fierce looks showed they were not easily trifled with. "Boss," he wondered what had happened. Well, so you are the black-hearted boss. You even dared to sell poisonous rice to my brother. Look at him! Originally he was a strong man, but after eating your rice he became this sickly. Normally he is as strong as a bear, but he can hardly stand now. You black-hearted person, worrying only about money and going as far as to take lives." At this outburst from the man, boss, he worriedly stammered, "How could this be? How could it?" The man then said, "How would I know? This morning my brother bought some rice from you and made rice porridge. Then he became like this after eating the rice he bought from you. I was lucky I didn't eat any. Otherwise, I also would become like him." "Boss," his forehead began to sweat. He took his sleeves and kept wiping his forehead and said, "Respected customer, I fear there might be a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? Misunderstanding your mother? What caused him to become like this if it wasn't your rice?" The Han man roared. Yang Kai sat down and pondered the situation while all eyes were on the commotion. "Boss, he is such a nice person. Yang Kai couldn't believe that this person who gave him rice would put poison in it. Not to mention the fact, boss, he couldn't possibly have a black heart in Yang Kai's mind. A black-hearted businessman wouldn't be so stupid as to poison his own rice. If this information spread, how would he do business in the future? Who would dare come and buy his rice?" The two men's poor excuses were really unbearable, and they couldn't even consider that it was something else. "Therefore, these two are definitely here to ruin others." But this move was a bit too evil, for they implied that the boss needed someone to die to earn some money. Even though Yang Kai's body was weak, he was still a practitioner. And these past years, he had seen countless types of people, so he felt he could accurately judge Boss He. The man was also someone he owed greatly, and when Yang Kai witnessed this, it caused his face to fall. He stood up and said, "These two." "What?" One of the men threw him a glare, his anger evident. Yang Kai didn't speak, but Boss He immediately sprang before him. He slowly shook his head for Yang Kai to stop. "Uncle He!" Yang Kai was stunned. Even in bankruptcy, avoid misfortunes. "Boss," he whispered. Yang Kai just helplessly sighed. The fact that the boss said this signaled that he knew what the two Han men were on about. But to do business, one must have a good name. The earlier commotion had already attracted much attention. The rice stand's reputation would go down the drain if this continued. Even if one knew what they said was false, one could only comply with them and hurriedly hope to end this fiasco before too much damage was done. "In desperation, boss," he faced the man. "Regarding your brother's illness, I can say that it has nothing to do with me." After the two men heard this, one shouted angrily, "Even if it's unrelated, I have already come to this rice stand. If I didn't clarify the truth, my brother's suffering would be in vain. He should be sent to the doctor immediately. But of course, if you are willing to shoulder the medical bills, then we are willing to drop the subject." After this statement, it was clear that you needed to go bankrupt to avoid misfortunes. If people really wanted to extort money, they would do it over some time. The demands that these two men were making were too short-sighted. If Boss He agreed to pay them off now, his rice stand's reputation would still suffer. Nothing is watertight, and news of him selling poisoned rice would spread. This told Yang Kai that the men were either not interested in extorting Boss He for more money, or that they had some other goal. Who would have imagined that these two Han men had no intention of compromising? "You black-hearted boss! Who do you think we two brothers are, to be exploited by you so freely? We two brothers were really unlucky to have bought poisoned rice from you. Where is your guilty conscience?" That statement resonated quite profoundly with Yang Kai. Did he curl his lip while sitting, thinking, were they virtuous and living with a clear conscience? Boss, he was also stupefied. What? What? Weren't these two men here to extort money? While stunned and unsure of what to do, more and more people gathered. A handsome boy similar to Yang Kai's age had also appeared. From his looks, he was clearly far better off than Yang Kai. That young man casually approached the men and circled them with interest. While doing so, he constantly clicked his tongue. Others may not have noticed, but with a glance Yang Kai recognized those three as the people he had spotted earlier in the alley. The crowd just stared at the boy who had just appeared. Weren't these three men together? Yang Kai sensed an evil plot in the air.